Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. This episode, we're going to be working on prepping the body. And the body of this is actually, it's three pieces altogether. We're going to have the lower fender section of it, and we also have the hood piece and the body itself. I have not done any work on the hood yet, and I haven't done anything on the lower chassis. I have done a little bit of work on the body, but we're going to go through the steps that I did on this to prep it and get everything cleaned up. I'll show you some tricks that I use for certain things and show you kind of which direction that I decided to go with this. So first off, you want to check the body for mold lines. This is for all the beginners out there, what this tutorial series is for. And the mold lines on this particular body basically start right here at the top of the cowl, and then it comes back, comes to the door line, comes up, and then across the drip rails, and then down the back, and then it comes over and down the rear door, and then it turns at an angle. You can see it right. See if I can get a good shot of it here. Out, get it in the camera. You can see that angle right there. That is a mold line. And also the same thing on this side over here. We have a mold line. Now, the one thing that I did do on this is the mold line ran right with the bottom of the drip rail. So I still have a little bit more sanding to do. After looking at the body and everything, I was like, this thing would look a lot smoother and cleaner without the drip rails. So I went ahead and kind of killed two birds with one stone there, I guess you could say. I went ahead and got rid of the mold line and also got rid of the drip rails at the same time. And basically to do that, all I did was took the number 11 blade and just started at the drip rail and kind of ran it all the way back and just kind of peeled it away and got most of it off of both sides. And then I went in with my sanding stick and just kind of sanded back and forth until I got it, pretty much smoothed out. Now, like I say, there's a little bit of an area right back here that I can still see a little bit of the drip rail. So we're going to go ahead and sand on that a little bit. And I'm trying to keep all of this as a rolled edge, so where this roof comes down to it. So I'm kind of rolling the sanding stick to make sure that I don't sand a flat spot into it. And we'll see if that got it out. That looks pretty good there. And then the other thing that I'm doing on this also is once I sand with that, I'm going to a lighter grit and I'm going back over the same spots just to get the sand scratches and stuff out that the heavier grit put in. And as far as the mold line from there to back here, that's how you take care of that. There'll be a little piece of the mold line that sticks right through this area. I took care of that by taking the number 11 blade and just lightly scraping um, the body right on that mold line. And we got all that taken care of. Once I got it down to that point, I actually took a piece of the 3000 grit sanding sponge, since this is such a small area right here, and you do have some raised detail. And I went in and just sanded that a little bit, and the mold line is gone. Now that mold line also continues right through the thickness here and in toward the front of the cowl. Basically the same procedure. I just took the number 11 blade, went in very lightly, and knocked the mold line off of the what I call the thickness. That's this point between here and here. And then I took the blade and cleaned up the rest of the line out to the front of the cowl. And I did that on both sides, same procedure, nothing changes. In fact, I still have a little bit of the mold line right here. And we're just going to scrape that. And that's pretty much all there is to that. And then we'll take our 3000 grit sanding sponge, and we'll go ahead and make sure we blend in all that area where we just scraped it. And that's looking real good. So real happy with that. So as far as the mold lines on this body, that's how we got rid of those. Now, when we get back to these ones back here in the back, I have noticed that they're probably going to need a little bit of filler. There's a sink mark right below both of these mold lines, and the body kind of flares out a little bit back here in the back. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of filling from basically this point right here down to this point, right around in that area on that side, and a little bit smaller area on this side here. But that'll take care of that. You could probably sand this and try to get the line out and the sink mark, but you're going to be changing the contour of the body substantially. So I didn't want to do that. So we're going to fill those parts. I'll do that off camera. Very simple process. Just put a little bit of filler on that, let it dry up, come back in, sand it a little bit, keep the contours of the body, and get rid of the mold line and the sink mark. So that's how we took care of the mold lines. And as far as mold lines on this body, that was pretty much it. They just came right up over here, down, and then out there, and that was the end of the mold lines. So next, we're going to move on to another step that I do, and that's what I call deepening the panel lines. And how you go about doing that, or how I go about doing it, is the number 11 blade, and I will come in on the panel line. This is the back side, not the sharp side of the blade, but it's the back side of the blade. And basically all you're going to do is just scribe that line just a little bit deeper, and it cleans all the trash that you get from the molding process out of it. Makes a very nice, clean, true line. And then as you do that, you can see the little chippings. Let's see if we can get it up here a little bit closer and get it to, where am I going? There I am. There we go. See the chippings that come out of that line? We're just going to take our brush. We're going to lightly brush them out of the way. Try to keep that line cleaned out as much as we can. And on that particular line, it's just a matter of continuing that process all the way around the perimeter of the door. This is something that requires a little bit of practice, a whole lot of patience, and I can guarantee you at some point in time, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, you are going to slip out of this groove and scar the body. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So like I say, you just got to practice. And a lot of times, if you scar the body, it's not going to be real deep. So you can take your lighter grit sanding stick and kind of come in and work the whole panel, get the scratch out, and then come back in and scribe your panel line a little bit deeper again. And that takes care of basically rescribing the lines. And I did it on this door here. I also did it around the rear tailgate, the rear door, and did it on the driver's door also. And this is another little trick that you can use as you get to sanding the body and doing things like that. You will notice that a lot of sanding residue gets down in these panel lines. You don't want to paint over top of that or prime over top of it, because it makes the panel lines look absolutely terrible when there's stuff down inside of them. You want the panel line to be nice and clean and with no junk down in it when you get ready to prime the body. So after you get done sanding the main part of the body and smoothing everything else out, just make sure that you come in. You don't need a lot of pressure on the knife. Just come in and kind of run it through the panel lines. And what that'll do is knock all that junk out of there. And you just take a brush everything off, and you'll be good to go. So that takes care of scribing the panel lines, which is something else that I do, on just about all my builds. The other thing that I do is take the sanding stick. In this case, it's the pink one, which is a little lighter, and I will go over the entire body. What I'm looking for is low spots. And as you do a little bit of sanding, you will turn the shiny plastic will turn to a duller white. And then anywhere there's a low spot, you will see glossy white. So what you're trying to do is sand all that down until you get rid of all those low spots. If it's just a small, like round spot like say in the center of this door, you're going to need to fill that. You don't want to sand too much because you're going to change the contours of the body. So you're going to need to put a little bit of putty in that and let that dry up, and then go back and sand it with your sanding stick. And it's just like doing, Bondo work on a one-to-one car. It's basically the same idea. And I do that all the way around. I also do it on the roof. I will move the sanding stick from front to back and make sure that there's no sink marks or anything like that, no ups and downs in the plastic. And this kit actually looks pretty good when it comes to the body, so it's been a treat to work with. And then usually once I go through my sanding grits through the different sticks here, I'll take a piece of the 3000 grit sanding sponge, and I will come in and basically just blend everything together with the sanding sponge and get it ready to go into a coat of primer. So that's the steps to do with that. Now, another area that I scribed on this is around the front windshield. There is like a molding that's all the way around the windshield. Now, of course, this has the cast-in wipers on it, which I absolutely hate. But in this case, we're going to keep it simple. We're not doing photo etch wipers. We're not going to cut them loose and add them on afterwards. We're just going to leave them in place. But what I'm going to do with those is they'll actually be covered in bare metal foil. And I'm also going to do this window trim in bare metal foil. So I did come around and rescribe the line that goes all the way around the windshield, and see if I can get the camera to pick up on that. Maybe, maybe not. No, won't quite do it. But there is a trim all the way around here, and I went in and rescribed all of that. And that works for one of two things. What I'm doing is scribing that panel line a little bit deeper, just like we did the doors. And also, since I'm going to do bare metal foil on this, what's rescribing this line does is it actually puts a nice groove all the way around the perimeter of what you're going to be bare metal foiling. And then when you put the bare metal foil on and burnish it into place, you can actually push it down into that deeper groove. Now you can take a brand new number 11 blade, you can lay it in the groove on top of the bare metal foil and just run the blade right around that groove. You don't have to worry about the blade really slipping out and cutting into the paint or anything like that. Now, another thing that we're going to be doing bare metal foil on is this raised side trim that's on here. And it goes all the way around the back, and it's also on the edges of the hood right here. A little trick that I do on that is I will come in with the front side of the number 11 blade, and I will line right up against, like, say, the top edge of this raised simulated chrome strip, and I will lay the knife in there, and I will slowly pull that knife right along that line all the way around the model. And once you get back here to the back part, you just continue that line. What you're doing is staying right up against the if I can get it to stay in the groove here we go. Keep it right up against the molding, just like that. And because I slipped out there a couple of times, I'm going to go ahead and just take my sanding stick and just knock those two little marks that I put in the raised part of the simulated chrome strip just to make sure we got that cleaned up. Like I say, if you're going to do rescribing, you will slip out. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. It's going to happen. It's just one of those things it's part of what we do. And then after you scribe that line all the way around the top side of the trim, you're going to come back in and you're going to come around the bottom side of the trim. And this is probably not going to be for everybody. This is just the way that I do it. Um, but it gives you another option to try. And as far as the beginners out there, I don't recommend this. You need a little bit more experience before you start trying to do, bare metal foil, and especially this technique, because you can really screw up a body if you don't take your time and you don't have a steady hand and the experience to do it. But basically, we're putting a groove, a shallow groove on both sides of the chrome, the bottom and the top. And what we're doing that for is the same thing that we're doing around the windshield. I'm going to come in after this thing is painted and I'll lay the bare metal foil, a strip of it, down this raised bead. And then once I burnish it all down, I'll take the blade and I'll drop the blade of the knife right in that groove that we've already put in here, which is kind of shallow, and it will cut the excess bare metal foil very cleanly all the way down through there. So that's why I do it that way. It makes a very nice foil job in the end, and it works. It just takes a little bit of practice. Now what I'm doing now is I'm actually taking the side of the sanding stick and I'm kind of turning it up on edge a little bit. Once you cut that line in there, you're going to create a little bit of a raised area. So you want to make sure that you get all of that kind of sanded down so it doesn't create a bump in your paint work. And I'm just using the simulated chrome, raised section as a guide for the sanding stick. And I'm sanding right up against it. And it does knock that little raised edge down that the blade creates. And then you just want to come around, brush everything off, and you're pretty much good to go with that part. And as far as the body prep, that's about it. Like I say, there wasn't very much mold release that I could see on this, so I did not put this in soap or water or anything. You can, if you feel that you may run into a problem later on or something like that, go ahead and put it in some dishwashing liquid and wash all the parts down, especially the body and stuff like that. If you want to, it's not going to hurt anything. And like I said in another video, you can't go wrong by doing that. I'm not one that usually does it. I can tell by pretty much by feel, how much mold release is on it, if any. And this body here was in real good shape, so we're not going to have any issues at all with this. But I've just had a little bit of area there that I seen on the drip rail that I shaved off. So I went back in and cleaned that up. And again, remember, whenever you do any, going back in and sanding stuff, make sure that you go ahead and run back through your panel lines and clean all the junk out of them before you start putting any primer or paint on the model, because once you put the first coat of primer down, you end up trapping all that stuff in there, and then you still got to rescribe it to make it look good. So go ahead and get that all cleaned up ahead of time, and you'll be ready to spray this thing in primer. Let's see, next step we've got is underneath here where it was attached to the parts tree. A lot of times you'll have some flash that's in here. I just take the sanding stick and kind of lay it in my fingers like that, and just come across the bottom of the body in this case, lightly back and forth there. Clean that up, make that nice and clean on the bottom. Same thing on this side, and you can do the same thing at the rear. That cleans up the bottom of the body. And then the last thing that I do is on these wheel well openings here, you'll have a sharp edge on the inside of it. This body's not as critical because it sits down on this lower piece and the fenders actually cover that part. But I like to come in and just take the knife and just smooth kind of like same thing we did on the frame rails. Just roll this sharp edge that's on the inside, and you don't need much, just enough to knock the edge off of it. And that keeps you from having any paint issues, or paint not wanting to stick to that, because it's trying to pull back away from that sharp edge. So I do that on all the edges inside the wheel wells. The back side, the back panel here, same thing. Just kind of run that blade across there and knock the sharp edge off. And then after you do that, you can take a piece of your 3000 grit sanding sponge, and you can actually do this right here. You can fold it around the body. You can see it on that side and how I'm holding it. And just slide that back and forth, and that sands everything and blends everything in all at one time. Same thing back here in the back. Same thing on this side, and you can also do it up in the wheel wells. Same procedure. Just kind of bend it like that and cup the body in it, and that's all there is to it. Nothing hard about it. And now that we have that sanded down, once I get everything pretty much prepped like that, I will come back in and go ahead and 3000 grit the remaining pieces. Pretty much the entire body I will go back over with the 3000 grit sanding sponge and get everything nice and smooth. And we get up here in this cowl area, across the top. Just make sure that you get everything smoothed down as good as you can. Right now, you're going to be putting this in primer, or you're going to be putting it in paint. So we're going to be doing primer on this one. I don't normally do primer on all of my bodies. This one I will, since I did shave the drip rails. I want to make sure that none of that goes back through. So we will do the primer on this one. I'm hoping to set the camera up at the spray booth and be able to show you the priming process and how to basically use a can and make it come out good and make it work for you. Going to give you some pointers on that. So that's what we have there. And like I say, after you sand this with the 3000 grit, make sure that you go back in and clean out your panel lines again. You don't have to put much pressure at all on these when you're doing that. Just get the junk that's in them out, and you'll be good to go. So there's that procedure as far as prepping the body. Now, this is a pretty simple body. Some bodies are a little bit more complex, but this one's not too bad. And then same procedures on the hood. Actually, one of the things that I'm going to do is this has a raised line down through the center of the hood, but it's real smooth on the roof. So I'm actually going to shave this line out right here and get rid of that. The hood will be just smooth across the top, and I will keep these two side pieces of trim right here. And that mold line I was talking about comes right down this piece of trim, and then it returns. Let's see if we can get a view of it here. If I can find the camera. Yep. That mold line is right in front of my finger there. You can see it drop off of the raised molding, and that's something you're going to need to get rid of. And then we'll finish prepping the hood. And then you have the trademark is stamped in underneath of here. Actually, it's ink is what it is. I took that out, and then there's 4 injector pin marks. Now, I've already sanded these 2 on this side, but this is one thing that I see a lot at the shows that guys don't really pay attention to. They will go ahead and paint their model and get everything looking real nice, and they'll set the hood. They'll have the model sitting here, and then they'll set the hood, like in this case, to display the engine. You just pick the hood up and you set it off to the side. Well, as a judge, and there's a lot of other judges out there to do it. I'm one that will definitely do it. If that hood's sitting out to the side when I'm making my initial, kind of narrowing the list down on first, second, and third or whatever, I will pick up this hood, flip it over, and if those injector pin marks are there, you're going to start dropping to the back of the running, and then you've got to do something very impressive on that model from that point to start trying to get back up near the podium. It's just being I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but to me, it's being lazy. If you're doing all the prep work on the hood and stuff like that, getting the mold lines out, and you don't take these injector pin marks out of here, it's just kind of being lazy. But it's nothing hard. In fact, these are raised a little bit, and you just come in with the sanding stick. And like I say, we have two of them there. And just to show you how easy this is to do, and basically pretty quick. Um, Yeah, we've already got rid of the front one right there. Now I'm working on the back one here. And like I say, this hood does have 4 in it. But altogether, it would take you probably 2 minutes at the most to sand those out along with the manufacturer's stamp. So it's not a whole lot of time being used up just to do that. And it makes a big difference in the finished product. Now the underneath of the hood is nice and clean. No injector pin marks, no flaws underneath of there. That's the way it should look. So that's another little tip that I've got for anybody that wants to go into competition. For the beginners, if you don't want to do the injector pin marks right off the bat, go ahead and basically learn how to build a model, how to put it together. And then, once you go, okay, this model building thing is something I want to do, then start addressing these basic issues like the injector pin marks and stuff like that. But if you're just starting out, you don't really need to worry about that step. But it would be nice if everybody got rid of them because they are, a flaw. It's a necessity for the molding process, but it's not something you want in the finished model. So that's the hood. Like I say, we're going to take this rib out of the center. Nothing special there. Clean up the other mold line, and then I will probably do another video on a couple of things that we need to address on the lower chassis. So stay tuned for that one. So that's about all we've got for this one. Like always, I want to thank everybody for all the interest in the series so far and all the nice comments, all the helpful tips that came up, on different things on what to put in the next video, camera angles, sound, all kinds of stuff. So I want to thank everybody for those. We're taking them everything into consideration, and well, so far we've been making changes every time somebody's had a very good request. So, but that's about it for this one. So again, I want to thank everybody, and as always, we'll talk to you later. Bye bye.